Thank you so much for joining us this morning again. We have, as you've seen, Adegboruwa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joining to discuss some of the issues that will be raised this morning, especially concerning electoral litigation. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Adegboruwa. So here we are again.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. As we said in the 90s, Nigeria is on the march again, it would seem. And here we are. The crucial issue that everyone has spoken about, from even as far as the president to the average Nigerian who is educated enough to know, is a crucial role of the judiciary in this. This step taken by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, for instance, there are those who are wondering concerning the timing of it. Too early, too late? But first of all, speak to the meat of the matter. What is your take on this step taken so far by the CJN?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. I do commend His Lordship, the Honorable the Chief Justice of Nigeria, for the effort taken to ensure that there is early takeoff of this process of resolution of electoral disputes. There are three tiers of government: the legislature, the executive, and also the judiciary. And so it's always important in every democratic setup that you should have a process by which people ventilate their grievances. And the reason is because in a society where there is rule of law, you do not expect that people should take laws into their hands. For instance, if you participated in a primary election and you got aggrieved, being dissatisfied with the outcome of that election, you are not expected to go and grab your opponent and beat him or kill him in order for him not to get to office. So you are expected to take the due process of law and follow through that process to ventilate your grievance. So for me, generally, it is commendable that we have these processes in place and that they are commenced early enough so that the judges themselves will have enough time to prepare. And the preparations should be about going through those manuals, going through those codes, going through those ethical requirements of that assignment to ensure that we learn from the mistakes of the past and ensure that as we move towards 2023, the judges are well prepared, the facilities are available, and we can have a system that can flow so that we can determine this dispute early enough, even before people to get into election. But that is generally, just like you have monitored this morning, the comments in the course of the review of newspapers, the Nigerians are worried about developments going on within our political system. And because judges are part of society, it then also means that there is a lot of concern about how these assignments are discharged generally in order to achieve a better society.
Well,
but having said
Mr. Adegboruwa, just 1 second.
I must comment.
My apologies, just 1 second. On that same issue that you mentioned, it would seem the concern is not just a passing one. The comment of the CJN also, while addressing the newly appointed election tribunal judges, was that as CJN, he is not going to tolerate any form of judicial recklessness. Is there a backstory to that, a history to that, in your opinion?
Well, yes, there is a need to restate this. And if you observe, every Chief Justice of Nigeria who has had the opportunity to inaugurate judicial panels or electoral tribunals have always restated these facts about the discharge of judicial assignment, abuse of ex parte orders, and the need for neutrality of judicial officers. So it will always be a sing song for anybody who is involved in inaugurating such gathering, because that is the expectation of the general people of Nigeria. And I think that the reason for this alarm so early enough is to avoid the pitfalls of what you see in the past, where there are conflicting judgments, where we have cases of abuse of ex parte orders. But I must make the point, Ayo, that this warning is only for few. The generality of Nigerian judges are fair, they are impartial. And I use the word generality because of my own personal experience going in and out of court every day. The majority of our judges are fair-minded. So, but once a single person goes above board, it is that particular one that people will pick generally and use it as a brush to paint or all other judicial officers. I can tell you, if we say maybe on a radio, 80% of judges, dispense judgment according to their own conscience. They may be wrong. And that's why there's opportunity for people to appeal and file their grievances. But generally, I can tell you without any fear of any doubt at all that majority of our judicial officers deserve commendation. And that commendation is because of the circumstances under which they operate. I mean, look at, for instance, my learned brother, Dr. Sebastian Horn, went to court recently, National Industrial Court, asking for a review of the salary of judges. This has never happened in the past 15 years. So if you, for instance, give me an appointment to be a judge, I will decline it. I won't even go and pray. I won't even think about it. Because the conditions under which judges operate are totally unacceptable. The salary, the welfare, the circumstances, judges are being intimidated. You wake up, you don't even know what will happen to you. I mean, judicial officers are subject to thorough screening by EFCC, by statutory agencies, law enforcement agencies. So we need to address those issues holistically. In the same way that we try to talk to the judges to work within the existing template. Otherwise, if we just keep sounding the warnings to them, don't be reckless, don't embrace corruption, they are members of society. So as we do this, we must also then fall back towards ensuring that we look at the conditions under which they operate. I don't want to mention states. I had cause to go out of Lagos recently to attend some courts. And I discovered that the generators that the court was using, it belongs to the judge. And probably he's the one fueling it. And that can't be acceptable in any circumstance.
Again, that raises
officer who is not well paid.
My apologies, Mr. Adegboruwa, for butting in. Again, that also raises an issue that I think it was the president of the Court of Appeal who also mentioned about funding the judiciary. Is funding a gap that could compromise the judiciary? Because one of the things that she said, I'm not sure it was something that she said yesterday, but that was previously mentioned some other time, was that, look, if this funding is not released on time for the judiciary to do the needful, there would be the problem of, being able to perform the job of the judiciary as expected. Is that something, a kind of reference to what the example you just cited now? Can you hear me, Mr. Adegboruwa? Okay. I'm pretty sure that we're going to get him back. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hope you can hear. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
I will actually...
Okay, go ahead. You froze for a second.
I can hear you clearly.
Yes, we lost you.
I'm very sorry.
Okay, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was saying that funding is important to the performance of judicial assignment. And not just judicial assignment. Every person you give a responsibility, you should provide the wherewithal, the materials that will be needed to excel or perform satisfactorily. Otherwise, if you leave me to scramble for things that I require or I'll need to perform my job, it comes to some kind of hindrance. In the circumstances in which the chief judges of the states or the chief judge of the Federal High Court or the chief justice of Nigeria would have to beg, for accommodation. You remember in the last regime of Honorable Chief Justice Muhammad Tanko, there was a protest by judicial officers of the highest court in the land concerning their welfare, accommodation, vehicles. So I believe that just as we sound the warning to judges to avoid corruption, we should also ensure, first of all, that we have created a template for them to excel. And thereafter, if a single one of them should go above board, we have the opportunity to be able to use that probably as an example, to be able to give the warning to society and people generally that we should work within the template provided. But if we just keep sounding warnings to them without addressing the core issues, that may be a challenge. And that also leads me to the major issue. Because the chairman of INEC said they have been joined in not less than 600 cases, which is very alarming.
We'll come to that.
Also commendable.
My apologies. We'll come to that one because, there are those, even you find it alarming. Some will find it very comical. But it raises another question that I wanted to ask before we go into that about the role of politicians in the scheme of things. I recall a statement also credited to the president, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, where he says, and I quote, "There's virtually nothing that has not been seen or heard before, but you should be ready to see and hear more." He said, "Even though I rejoice with you on this very important appointment, I still sympathize with you for the many troubles, inconveniences, verbal attacks, and all sorts of uncomplimentary remarks are to be made about you by various litigants." These litigants, needless to say, would be, politicians in most cases. So in your opinion, what is this some form of pressure on the judiciary?
I think that the challenge you have is that we have people who embrace systems that they cannot practice. Democracy is about freedom of choices. And so it goes back to the issue of leadership recruitment. For instance, primary election. You surrendered yourself to the people to make a choice whether they want to accept you as their representative. And in your presence, a decision was taken. Votes were counted. Politicians should find a way to accept losses. And you knew you lost the election. And then you begin to run around looking for technicalities. The man doesn't have the name, his name is different, he has I, he doesn't have T. And because of that, you are going to go to the Supreme Court. And you knew within your conscience you lost the election. Let me give you the example, Ayo. Look at the Prime Minister of Britain, Mrs. Liz Truss. Less than 2 months, she said, "I feel that I cannot discharge the responsibility that's expected of me. I'm leaving. I don't have anything at stake. I'm not there to look for money. I don't have anything at stake at all." And this is the core issue that we're facing in our land. We push people who go to office to enrich themselves. We push people who go to office to be able to use that as a means to better their lives. So it makes everything become more contentious. It's so difficult for people to accept that I have lost the election because their expectation is to use that platform to take care of themselves. And that then goes back to the issue of society, infrastructure. If there is enough security, if there is power, if there is enough vehicle trained to go about, it would also have so many of the problems that push people to want to remain in power forever. So that's why I said it's difficult to just isolate the judiciary and then heap the blame on them, even though I know that, some of our judicial officers have some challenges. But I think that we should do it holistically to ensure that politicians learn to accept defeat and not make every electoral contest a matter for judicial interpretation.
But some
Otherwise,
of them,
once you file the case,
yes, the politicians in most cases don't go to the courts on their own. They go through lawyers who are also in the judiciary. They know the laws. They of course, you know the drill more than I do. The politicians in most cases will always look for the loops in the laws to take advantage of, you know, the names and all those things that you have talked about. So is all of that on the politicians or even the judicial practitioners who know the law, who know the extent to which any case should go or should not go, as to go ahead anyway? The court is bound to listen to them, isn't it?
it's the politicians, Ayo. Let me just give you a scenario. This is Channels Television. You have your own principles. There are news items that will come to you. You filter them and you decide that it's not worth our reputation. So you throw it aside. The person who has supplied the news, seeing that Channels, because of your reputation, you are unwilling to publish falsehood, will probably then look for a blogger or somebody who doesn't have a reputation. There are many cases that come to me in my office here. I just look at the facts and say, it's not worth my name. And I give advice and say, don't bother yourself about this. But the politician who doesn't want to accept sound advice will then probably look for another person on the street who can then help him push the case. So it still goes back to the culture of accepting the will of the people, because that is the real essence of democracy. And you see what the legislature has done with the new Electoral Act. They've tried to sanitize it. They've tried their very best to make it more transparent. And that's the reason why you see I didn't join blaming judges mostly. Because if a case doesn't go to the court, there'll be no need for any judge to go and beg for you to file a case. So we have to go back to the politician. We as lawyers, we can't go to court to file cases on behalf of people unless they come to us. And we give them sound advice based on existing principles of law, but they will not accept. I know many people who have come to me and I tell them, I don't think this thing will fly. But later on, I will read a case on the newspapers. They have gone to somebody else. So you can't blame the lawyers. It's for us to get our political actors to accept democratic norms of surrendering yourself to the will of the people. You may have money. You may be a big man. If the people do not accept you, then go and look for something else to do. And don't heat up the politics. And don't create panic. Don't create tension.
It is interesting, Mr. Adegboruwa, that you say that, you know, the lawyers are not to blame here. You are a lawyer, you say no to them. I mean, you've chosen to go by certain ethics of the profession. I wonder how others can't. But, you know, let's leave that. You mentioned the other time what the chairman of INEC also mentioned, which is the fact that, you know, INEC has been joined in 600 cases. In one situation, they were joined in 70 cases within, is it 1 day or 2 days or thereabout? And one wonders exactly how that has come to be. What do you make of that in the first place?
It is commendable. Honestly, it's
commendable that there are so many cases for INEC to deal with?
Oh, yes. You see, the reason why I say it's commendable is this. He said that this volume is lesser than what happened last year. In other words, the thing that is engineering the cases is probably, for instance, the Electoral Act. We have a new one. And so a lot of the provisions are being interpreted because they are new. And so it will generate more contests, it will generate more acrimony, and then the only option is to go to court to give interpretation. That's why when I started, society exists on 3 tiers: the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. The Electoral Act is a product of the legislature. If you check through those systems, so many ambiguities, so many issues that you look at it and say, why didn't they think of this? Why didn't they put this there? Why did they do this? So you won't more or less say that it is the fault of those who go to the court or the fault of the judiciary who interpret the cases. It is the law. It's created so many ambiguity. And in spite of that ambiguity, it's still a commendable improvement compared to what we used to have. So we're just starting. We will keep learning. It will keep getting better. We shouldn't get worried that we have cases. The worry should be that there is enough platform to treat those cases within 1 month, within 1 week, for people to know the outcome. And then to ensure that we don't create conflict.
Yeah, just a quick one, Mr. Adegboruwa, before Chamberlain comes in. There are those who also say that INEC is complicit in those cases that you talked about. For instance, there are those who are wondering that why would INEC, for instance, accept some political parties' names, the names from political parties of people who didn't participate in primaries or, especially some of those primaries that they themselves monitored. What's your take on that?
It is still a matter of appealing to our political actors and all stakeholders in the system of leadership recruitment. You are the owner of the political party. You are probably the chairman or the secretary. And you knew that you didn't invite INEC to monitor your primary. And yet you went to file a case in court to ask that INEC should declare you as the winner of the election. I mean, I can't tell you what I go through here as a lawyer, the kind of things that people bring to us to want to just go and test the waters. So because I'm speaking from experience, it's the politicians. Because INEC itself will probably wait to get a court order. And without an order, he will not probably take a decision because he has no right to disqualify any candidate. But you will see politicians who didn't participate in election. You will see politicians who didn't invite INEC to monitor the primary election, going to court to ask that they be declared as the winner of the election or as the candidate, or force INEC to recognize them. I'm not saying INEC is perfect. I'm not saying there are no challenges. But for me, generally, we have to get to a stage whereby the people who provoke these inconsistencies, the people who provoke these tensions, we should have a way to get them to accept, to simmer down, and allow the system to reproduce itself and improve itself to the extent that we can copy and joyfully say what we see in America, what we see in Britain is what is replicated in Nigeria. Unless we have that change of attitude, you can do a million electoral act. It will still come back to the same position that politicians do not accept defeat.
That's a very key point that you've highlighted, Mr. Adegboruwa. But for those who listened and heard the part where you spoke about some lawyers reject certain matters, they go to others who accept it and go to courts, and then you hear all sorts of things. But we also know that the role and the importance of the judiciary in a democracy like ours is very, very huge and significant, because if we get it wrong at that stage, lots of people, we don't want people taking laws into their hands because everything collapses if that were to be the case. But how is it then that, because we know that there are rules, there are laws, processes that lawyers have to abide by, because it is some of those who are very professional who refuse those cases. Because when you say justice doesn't only need to be done, it ought to be seen to have been done. So how should this be approached, wherein you don't have politicians who keep boasting, we will meet you in court, we will go to court because we know we can have our way when we do get there? Because if that keeps coming across to the people like that, and then they keep denigrating the courts, that certainly it's not a good thing for our system. Are you there, Mr. Adegboruwa? Can you hear me?
Yes, Kimberly, I can hear you. I was actually saying hello. I'm sorry, please. Maybe I got lost in the...
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead. Did you get the question, though?
No, I didn't get your question. I'm sorry, please.
Oh, I was talking about the point you made about some lawyers or politicians who prevail on some lawyers to perhaps go over to the courts and bend the laws or the books. Is that really tenable? Because you equally have rules and rules of proceedings, processes that lawyers have to, they subscribe to it. Some of the lawyers are professional, while some others are not. And we also know that it says, look, justice must not just be done, it must be seen to have been done. So is it tenable if lawyers say, well, politicians are to blame for this because they keep harping on lawyers doing certain things in the courts?
Well, generally, like we have reference in the earlier discussion, every profession has rules of even lecturers. And now there's even people who manage motor parks. You see that they have their own system. So every profession will probably develop its own system of discipline, its own ethics. If a lawyer finds a fit in court, knowing what the law says, knowing what... Hello, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, there. Yes,
I can hear you. Go ahead.
For the legal profession to deal with. It's for our legal profession to deal with errant cases of professional misconduct. And you have a lot of this going on currently within the legal profession. A lot of it going on. And we must commend that system.
Do you agree with those who say that the way judges are appointed happens to be at the root of some of these challenges that we're facing? And if we address that, we won't be talking about some of these matters wherein people think that judges are being influenced to give rulings in a certain direction.
I have no doubt that it is important to review that process to make it more transparent, to make it more participatory for all stakeholders. For instance, before you appoint a lawyer as a judge, you probably want to find out from the Nigerian Bar Association, from his colleagues, about his reputation, about his professional conduct, and if he's probably somebody who works in the ministry, you also have the opportunity to profile such a person. So it's important to make the process a little more transparent and also participatory. But beyond that, generally, because judges are part of society, there is no amount of transparency that will still eliminate that possibility of partisanship. So it's for us to get to accept that when you have people in office who have been appointed to be arbiters, learn to accept whatever they have decided. And if you are not satisfied, there's opportunity for an appeal against that at another time. So it's not just to focus on the system of appointment, even though that is desirable, but to ensure that we cultivate that culture whereby we say democracy involves the freedom of choices. And when you are not satisfied with what has been done, then and you go to court, then follow the process of that judicial determination and don't seek to influence it, don't seek to bribe the judge, don't seek to corrupt the person who is appointed to determine the dispute. I think that's what's important.
All right, we'll go to break, but we'll return and consider some other matters in just a moment. Do stay with us. Saying, well, they kind of disagree. They think that, in the first place, that this whole scenario, politics itself is about conflict resolution. They will always have issues, and that's why they approach the courts. But that the judges who allowed themselves to be used are the ones who should be taking the flak. So one wonders, does this kind of conversations happen at the higher level within the profession? And were there suggestions in terms of how these kind of things can be addressed? Because we see time and again that CJNs keep talking about that caution to judges not to lend themselves to such activities?
Honestly, it would be hypocritical for me to tell you that I'm not aware that there are exceptional cases of lawyers and judges who really give us a bad name. And I have seen a lot. And it's quite worrisome about the issues we raise about transactional justice, where, it's possible, for instance, that you and I approach a court to settle a dispute for us, and then there's somebody else who takes over the matter and is going by hand to lobby, to corrupt people, to offer all manner of inducements. It does exist. I have no doubt about that there are exceptional cases. But like the point I made earlier, it will probably be 2 out of 10. And opportunities exist within our system to deal with them. For the lawyer, for instance, to be taken to the legal practitioners disciplinary committee for those within the outer bar, and then the legal practitioner privileges committee for those within the inner bar. And maybe these things don't come to the public domain all the time. But I can tell you, virtually every day, lawyers are being sanctioned, in particular for various acts of professional misconduct. It's just that goes on in the outer society. You can't but have these cases of errant behaviors within our professional association. But enough mechanism exists to deal with those cases, either for the judges and even for the lawyers. And so that will not be enough for us to discard the entire system, or, for instance, say that the judiciary has failed. Because without the judiciary, you can imagine the level of acrimony, violence that probably will have been going on, not only from electoral issues, but from commercial disputes, husband and wife, contractor matters. So it's just for us to continue to sanitize the system and ensure that those who try to bend it or to abuse it are daily being dealt with.
Very quickly, let me ask you this before we go into one or two other issues. INEC, at that briefing of yesterday, also made an allusion to the 2019 elections concerning elections that were upturned. He said, and I quote, 30 elections were upturned by the tribunals in 2019 as against over 100 in previous elections. So, even so, in 23 out of 30 constituencies, that is 76%, the elections were only set aside in some polling units and not a wholesale nullification of elections in entire constituencies. Now, you've mentioned the government part, which is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. But then in the elections, there are major stakeholders, which include political parties and the voter themselves. In this scenario that INEC has brought up that you have also seen and heard, exactly how do we reduce or totally take out those numbers where the elections are not decided at the polling units, but either in the courts or some other means?
It's a worrisome development for us. And even before you raise this issue, we have always advocated for a system whereby people should be allowed to choose their leaders. I do not agree, for instance, that we should have a president who is appointed or declared by the Supreme Court, or we have governors who are declared by the Supreme Court. It could happen in exceptional cases, but it should not be so prevalent as to totally make the judicial forum the platform for determining the choice of people. I do not.
Certainly something network issues, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have him back because that development is certainly worrisome and is something that I know that the judiciary themselves are quite worried about. So please go ahead, Mr. Adegboruwa.
If, for instance, the judiciary gives a decision, as they have done over the years, that the choice of candidates of who represents a political party should be the internal affairs of that political party. The judges have consistently maintained that principle as a decision. But you discover that even when that decision is the will of the judges or their decision, the politicians do not accept it. And they will find a way to seek to bend it. They will find a way to seek to upturn that procedure and still impose themselves on their people. So it's my own counsel for us, both judges, politicians, we should allow people to choose their leaders. And so we'll have less of governors declared by the courts. We have less of legislators, less of councillors declared by the courts. Otherwise, once that is gaining ground, everybody will seek to then use that as a means to upturn the will of the people. Election then becomes irrelevant in the choice of democracy. And that is really unacceptable.
Is there any way the electoral... My apologies. Is there any way the Electoral Act can, as previously constituted the 2022 law, is there any way in which the law, helps to ameliorate that?
I think that it's important for the National Assembly by now to take a second look at the Electoral Act. Yes, it's commendable that it's an improvement upon the old one, but the ambiguities created in several sections of the Electoral Act is enough to give us cause for concern about what we'll probably witness in 2023 and beyond that period. But it probably is too late now to amend the current Electoral Act for the 2023 elections because it will cause a lot of disruption. But immediately after the 2023 elections, it will be important to review the and of course rework it. And it's doable. So it's a learning process.
Okay. Well, just a quick one on, still talking about people, rights and dignity of human life in Nigeria concerning, and this is one of the things that interests you, human rights and all of that. Just recently, we were told that the Abuja-Kaduna Railway service will resume, but I don't know if we can say much the same for the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, even though it is not totally shut down, but the experiences that people have on that road is something so concerning, even you have to write about it, joining your voices with that of several other people. Exactly, in your opinion, what is going on here? Mr. Adegboruwa, can you hear me? Okay, I am very certain that we're going to get him
I
back.
think that the Ibadan Expressway is a road infrastructure that is supposed totally unacceptable because the road construction is supposed to be meant for use by the people to better our lives. A road that is supposed to be a means of
Please go ahead, Mr. Adegboruwa. Okay, I'm sure that we're going to get him back, but that's the
mobility from one point to the other should not be entirely at the feet of the government and the country. Not just the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, but generally all our roads. There's a feeling of abandonment by the government. Look.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that we're going to get Mr. Adegboruwa back, but this is the experience that several people have on a daily basis.
Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, for instance.
Just a second. Mr. Adegboruwa, can you hear me?
No, very recently.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Well,
yes,
we seem to be getting on and off signals from you for a bit, but if you could, pretty much, take that question again and, let us have your opinion so we can make a lot more sense of what you're saying about the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Please go ahead. Oh dear. Well, anyway, it's just network issues.
Surely I can hear you.
Okay, please go ahead now. We seem to be getting on and off signals from you. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I said that the facility that is meant to convey people from one spot to the other shouldn't be a death trap. And the federal government should take the blame for what is going on that road every day. Because what we see now is that there's no funding for the road. We don't know what's going on. I mean, it's a road that's taken 2 administrations of over 10 years. And there's no solution, in sight. And I had an experience, and I probably could have lost my life, but for the grace of God, at night, going through that road for 3 hours, for 4 hours. And people go through that every day. People come to work, people are traveling. So it's important for the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing to sit down with the contractor and work out a template that will avoid what our people go through in terms of their health challenges, in terms of loss of man-hour, so that this construction can come with some kind of human face and be accelerated. You are talking about the busiest road in probably sub-Saharan Africa. The template of this reconstruction is totally unacceptable because the right to life should not be terminated by government negligence. And I know people who have died by reason of their experience on that road. I know people who have suffered serious health challenges on that road. And so it's not acceptable, for instance, that there are no agencies to be able to guide people. The place is not illuminated at night. There are challenges about people who remain on that road for 4 hours, sandwiched between trucks, fumes, and there's nobody to guide you. There is no light. And then we keep getting the promise that the road will be completed in 2022, and we're almost in December, and there's no sign. So I believe that either the contractor is not being funded, or indeed the government is playing politics with the reconstruction.
To understand, what you mean. This is you've spoken about funding
of the Lagos for the administration.
Yeah, just one moment, if you can hear me, Mr. Adegboruwa. Twice in your response, you've spoken about funding for the reconstruction going on along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Is that something you have on good authority, funding challenge for the project?
No doubt. I have no doubt that the government is playing politics and is not funding that project. Because on a number of occasions,
okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that we're going to get, Mr. Adegboruwa back, to speak about this. But it's
both contractors, RCC, as a bait, because election is coming. The federal government and the government of the All Progressive Congress is deliberately using this road as campaign strategy for our people, and it's unacceptable, totally unacceptable.
When you say using it for campaign, could you elucidate?
I don't have any doubt in my mind that discharging its responsibility. I can hear you, Mr. Ayo.
Yes, I said, when you say they're using it for campaign purposes, exactly what do you mean?
What I mean is this. The government is using projects to tie the hands of the electorate. We are going to complete second Niger Bridge. We're going to complete Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. We're going to do this. We're going to do Nigeria Air. In order to give the impression that there's need for continuity. And that is unfortunate and it's unfair. Otherwise, if you are committed to a project, why should it take 8 years for a reconstruction of a road that is less than 200 kilometers? 8 years. If not that they are using it as a bait for people to vote their own party into power, as a means of ensuring continuity. I see it as that. Otherwise, there's no reason why people go through what we normally go through on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Totally unacceptable.
Well, Mr. Adegboruwa, there a number of times we have taken up the Federal Ministry of Works on this matter, and one of the things that we hear them say is, look, it is understandable what people are going through. They sympathize and all of that. But they also, raise concerns about the way the people also use the roads. Some, would just they don't use the roads discriminately. Sometimes, long and short saying, some of the issues they have is that of road use by the people themselves. For instance, a route that is supposed to take 3 cars, sandwiched to take 2 cars, but the people are not patient enough, and consequently they shunt and drive irresponsibly and block the roads, so that they create a backlog that wasn't part of the design. How do you respond to that?
No, but that is an unfortunate blackmail. I'm sorry to use that word from anybody saying such a thing. I was on the road myself in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. In the middle of the night, 2 a.m. and spent close to 4 hours there. Not a single presence of any security agency or any transport agency or transport monitoring agency to guide people. How do you go back and labeling people as road users are not patient to use the road when there is no guide, when there is no opportunity for them to enjoy illumination? How do you drive in the night? Who is responsible for construction has not placed any sign. There are no, what do I call them, lights that will enable you navigate from one point to the other, and there's nobody directing you. No ambulance services, no security agents on site to be able to assure you of your safety. I don't think that is fair from any government official to say that the blame is on the road users. And you get to the traffic point, Ayo, you then begin to wonder what's going on. Why do you narrow the road if you are not walking? Why will it take 1 month for you to do a single joint of a particular road, and then you're on that portion, and then immediately you open the road, next week you are coming to block it again? Why is there so much inconsistency in the construction plan? Because there's no assurance, for instance, that that road will be completed this year. No assurance. And even there's no assurance that it will be completed in 2023. And the government is liable because the Constitution guarantees the right to life. Anything you do to deprive people of their life that doesn't follow due process, you are liable.
Adegboruwa, there are a number of questions. My apologies. A number of other questions to raise along the issues that you have brought up in this conversation, but we'll take that on when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. We still have Mr. Adegboruwa with us, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. We're talking about the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and the issues there. Well, Mr. Adegboruwa, some of the issues you've raised only further expatiates or highlights, shall I say, the issues that may or could arise as a result of the sufferings, so to speak, the experiences people are having on the highways. Is there any way, in your opinion, that people can seek redress? Is there any need for any form of redress? Talking about the issues that you've raised, people whose lives are put in jeopardy and all of that. Do you see such a thing happening, any litigation happening as a result of that?
Let me just give you a graphic picture. An elderly, reputable, well-known legal practitioner traveled out of Lagos. On his way back, he ran into this gridlock and remained there for hours. He couldn't get down from his car because trailers and trucks are parked on both opposite sides of the car with fume coming out. And he remained on that spot for over 3 hours and realized that his health was failing. And he managed to get down from the car to stretch his leg and move around, but it was too late. Developed health complications and eventually died. Such circumstances, if the family would take the gauntlet to produce a suit in court against the government and the contractor, the Constitution says in section 33 that every person is entitled to the right to life. And the only circumstances of that deprivation are stated clearly in law. So if you deploy a road construction that is meant to serve the people, to terminate their life, you are liable. Unless we take this opportunity to hold government accountable, this will not stop. And I can tell you, Ayo, Julius Berger, probably a company from Germany, will he do this in his own country and lock up the roads for months, the whole night? The place is dark, no sign, no ambulance services. Will Julius Berger be able to replicate this in Germany and get away with it? So I'm encouraging our people. And it's not because, we do not commend the government for the effort in terms of provision of infrastructure. But no infrastructure should be pursued if the end result will lead to termination of life. No road construction should be worth the life of any Nigerian. No project should be worth the suffering and agony that our people are going through. Because the government should sit down and plan. How long will it take us to execute this project? What is the funding available for it? It's unacceptable, for instance, Ayo, that 8 years.
Well, I'm pretty sure, yeah. If you can hear me, Mr. Adegboruwa.
No completion date. I can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to ask a question around whether or not you think these issues that you have raised, the human rights issues you have raised, are things that are within the POV, the point of view of the Ministry of Works, Federal Ministry of Works and Housing. I say that because the Minister of Works and Housing is also a senior advocate of Nigeria, such as yourself. Now, given the fact that, one, he is very well versed in law, two, I'm very, very sure he's very well aware of the agonies that people have on these roads. Do you think he is aware of the issues that people are having and consequently sitting atop it, or you think the Federal Ministry of Works is just blinking in the dark, unaware, and perhaps, as you are suggesting, uninterested in the welfare of the people?
I believe, from my own personal assessment, based on my own experience, no excuse can be proffered by any minister. No reasonable justification can be propounded by any government to rationalize the frustration, the agony that our people go through on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and indeed other roads across the Federation. I do not want to place it on the doorstep of any particular person, but the minister in charge of road construction is the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing. He should take responsibility. It's not a matter of just a soapbox. The reality on the ground is that our people are suffering. The reality on the ground indeed is that government is not showing responsibility in terms of the acceleration of the project, in terms of funding, in terms of timely warnings for people through enlightenment programs. You should know, for instance, that this is the alternative route you can take. You should know, for instance, that this is the number of days that it will take us to execute this project. Everybody is just silent. We just take people for granted. You just go there and narrow the road, and this is the busiest road in sub-Saharan Africa. And people stay in traffic, jeopardizing their health, their man hours for hours. The longest project anybody has constructed in the world, because it started even under the Goodluck Jonathan administration, who was using it as political strategy to get re-election. And that's exactly what the Buhari administration is also engaged in. And it's unfair on our people. We must say it, that every time we get these kind of fake promises of delivery of infrastructure that leads to the death of people, we should rise up and reject those people when the opportunity comes for election. We should. I believe Nigerians should use this particular frustration to pay the APC government back in its own coin. Why would you do a less than 200-kilometer road for 8 years? It's not saying that you can complete it in your tenure. It's unacceptable. And we should go to court and challenge the government. All of us who suffer agony on this road should have the courage to approach the law court and hold the government accountable.
Okay.
Totally unacceptable.
Well, you made a comment earlier, Mr. Adegboruwa, that as far as you're concerned, you don't see this road being completed this year, probably not even next year. But both the Controller of Works at the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, as well as the Minister of Works and Housing, have said that this project will be completed before this year is over. So I ask you again directly, do you think their promises hold water, or you have your doubts?
I don't think you need a prophet to let anybody know that that is just wishful thinking. To say that the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway will be completed in December, I mean, it's just wishful thinking. I mean, the telltale signs are all there. Major sections of the road are even not tackled at all. And even the parts that they claim has been completed, you get there, you see it undulating, you see some portions being scraped today and replaced tomorrow. How can anybody accept this as a reconstruction project? And then we've used all our resources, Abacha loot, we've used all our resources, loan here and there. Our generation will be paying for loans upon this poor construction. I don't think that anybody should deceive the people of Nigeria that he wants to hand over any project in 2022. It's not possible. And I'm not saying that it's not a laudable thing to embark on infrastructure, but don't use it as a political capital, as a gimmick. Be very transparent and fair in your assessment. Be very committed. Fund the project. How many governments will account for a road construction for 8 years? I have not seen it before. If you don't want to do the road, it's a different thing. But don't continually give us the hope and assurance that you are on it. And we can see evidence that it's not moving. So my own contention to the people of Nigeria, of course, is to hold the government accountable, to ensure that this project is funded and completed. Because if it's going to be completed, we'll see the evidence. There's no such evidence. You get to the point where the road is narrowed, you even wonder, what is Julius Berger doing? You don't see anybody. You don't see any activity. And you see blocks that are mounted to limit free passage in the name of construction, and nothing is going on there.
Well, just
it's unacceptable.
Okay, just one quick one before we round this off. What would you expect the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, in particular the Honorable Commissioner for Works and Housing, beg your pardon, Honorable Minister for Works and Housing, to do now, listening to this that you say?
I beg the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing to show responsibility. I beg Julius Berger to demonstrate globally acceptable standards for road construction. For instance, Ayo, number one, tell us funding. Everything should be transparent. Is the money of the people of Nigeria, how much have you committed to the road? What is needed to complete it? Do we have that fund available? Make it transparent. Lay it on the table. Secondly, provide enough security to give people assurance. How do you go into a road at 2 a.m. with your valuables, with your children, with your wife, at the mercy of terrorists, cultists? What happen in our nation? The Federal Minister of Works and Housing should look for ambulances and place them on the opposite side in case anybody has any emergency. You can come to their rescue. And then Julius Berger should be pragmatic in the road construction, in the execution.
Okay.
Why would you block various portions of the road at different times when you are not working? If you want to concentrate on a particular angle, do that place, execute the construction and finish it before you move to the other area.
All right.
You can go to that road now. They are not.
Oh dear.
Yes, Ayo.
Okay, no, I just wanted to say, I mean, I can only expect that right after this program you will get calls, or there will be responses, hopefully, and they will be able to bring the updates to people. For now, we have to thank you very, very much for all of your perspectives this morning. Adegboruwa is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you once again for being a part of our program this morning.
Thank you, Ayo. I'm begging that we should not let Christmas or even the season meet us in this circumstance. Otherwise, the agony of the people will be unthinkable.
Wow.
Unthinkable. Thank you very much.
I'm pretty sure everyone has heard you. Thank you again for being a part of our program.